Earlier in the run, we talked about everything from media violence to political polarization to ways that media economics are problematic for democracy. And tonight is a real treat, because tonight we're going to shift gears a little bit. And tonight is all about self-promotion, because it's my show and I do what I want. And so there's a book I'm writing, ladies and gentlemen. And the book is called Irony and Outrage. And then there's this other stuff that makes it sound scholarly and smart. But the fun part is Irony and Outrage. And this is a book that I'm writing with Oxford University Press, and hopefully it'll be, done soon and then, published after that. But the book was really a response to a question that I have been asked for years. So it started when I started work in graduate school at the Annenberg School, right over there, over the Schuylkill, Annenberg School for Communication at UPenn. And in 99, I started my work there. And it was the same year, fortuitously, that Jon Stewart began hosting a little show called The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Now, The Daily Show was not created by Jon Stewart. It was created by Liz Winstead and Madeline Smithberg, and it was hosted by Craig Kilborn for a time. But once Jon Stewart took over the show, it very much changed the course, okay? It was not as much about man-on-the-street interviews, poking fun at normal people. It had a deliberately political tone. They then, at the same time, hired Ben Carlin, who was a former executive editor of The Onion back in the day. So the show and my time at Annenberg coincided, so why not make a whole career out of it? That was kind of my take. So I started studying the effects of exposure to satire on learning, on attitudes, on behaviors, and did some studies, found some stuff, good times, then published, got tenure, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. But the question that I never could avoid, and I never felt like I had a good response to, was the question that I'm still always asked to this day. And that question is, Dr. Young, why is satire so liberal? So, looking at the satirists at the time, I thought, like any good scientist would think, they're not. And then I went through one by one. Yep, liberal, shit. They are. Damn it. And then I started looking back in time and realized, like, okay, you know what? Let's think about this for a second. Let's think about counterexamples like Larry the Cable Guy. Larry the Cable Guy is a conservative comedian, right? But he's not a satirist. And then I was like, okay, but what about, there's Dennis Miller. He's a conservative satirist, but he's not funny. So why is it that we can't find any good examples? And that's when I thought, you know what? We need to look back, and I'm sure there's examples. I'm sure when we look back to the start of stand-up, we look at improv, there are good examples. And all I could come across were a bunch of socialists. Damn it. Lenny Bruce, Mort Saul, Dick Gregory, and the Smothers Brothers, who even got a show on CBS because they looked like clean-cut Midwestern guys, and their time on the Smothers Brothers show coincided with their political awakening as they became anti-war and anti-segregation, at which point they basically went to war with two different presidents, and CBS said, "You're done," and they took them off the air. And I thought there has to be a counterexample, but there wasn't. So then I started reading up on satire from like literature, like not like TV shows that are satirical, but like books, because some people read books. So I go back and I start looking at like satirical texts. And how do you define a satirical text? I thought, oh, well, that's the answer, is that satire always challenges the status quo. It challenges the existing order of things. So therefore, satire tends to have a liberal progressive perspective because liberalism is also challenging of the status quo. And then, I don't know if you remember, Stephen Colbert started his show, The Colbert Report, on Comedy Central before he was on network. He was on Comedy Central. I don't know how many old people are here. I have no idea. Okay, I mean, it was only like a couple years ago, but still, you never know. With my undergrads, it's like it could be like 30 years ago, I don't know. And when he started that show, he was invited to speak at Harvard University. And he was asked by the super whippersnappery smart undergrads at Harvard, why is satire so liberal? I was like, good, I'm not the only one who's always asked this damn question. And he responded, and I thought, well, if he responds this way, it must be right. He said, going after the status quo is not necessarily a conservative thing to do. Boy, talk about a diplomat, huh? It's antithetical to the idea of conservatism, he says. Comedy's about change, so it's going to be a challenge for them. So this satisfied me for a while. So this was my answer, and I was like, it's got to be right. Stephen Colbert says it too. It's totally right. This is why we can't find any conservative satirists. But then, I don't know if you remember, but in 2008, we elected a gentleman named Barack Obama, who was a progressive liberal president. He was president for not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 8 years. And at some point, doesn't liberalism then become the status quo? At some point in that time, doesn't Barack Obama and his political agenda become the status quo? And I know, because you're in a comedy club, that you are all communists. And so I know that you're thinking right now, Barack Obama wasn't really liberal. Listen, take off your whatever socialist glasses, okay? Because I can hear it. I can hear you like, he wasn't that liberal. Hello, we don't have universal health care, so like, he didn't do that much. Listen, okay? The ACA, gay marriage, gays in the military, gays everywhere, transgender rights, criminal justice reform, getting rid of mandatory minimums. Come on. Okay, so at some point, doesn't this become the status quo? And if it is, then why is it then, because I don't know if you remember this, but there were conservatives at the time who didn't like this president. I know it feels like it was 47 years ago. The last 18 months have seemed very long. I know that. But there were some people who did not like him. So why is it, if he's the status quo and he's been in power for a long time and conservatives don't like him, why would they not use the vehicle of satire to criticize him? At least not successfully. And in fact, it wasn't for lack of trying. Because even before Barack Obama was elected president, Fox News launched a little-known satire program in the spirit and form of The Daily Show, which some of you probably don't remember, most of you. That is because the half-hour news hour was launched in February 2007. It was off the air by September 2007. So what happened was, conservative media dabbled in satire in the same way that Danna dabbled in high school athletics. It was the shot put. I don't even know. I don't know what I did with the shot put. Meaning, they thought it looked easy. They tried it. They were terrible at it. And they have spent every day since denying that it ever happened. Okay? Absolutely true. Now, so what did they do? We both did the same thing. Once we were done dabbling in the shot put and dabbling in satire, we went back to what we did best. For me, that happened to be the math team. Okay? For them, it happened to be angry men yelling about immigrants and welfare queens. And they did it very well. And it has proved very successful for Fox News. And in fact, this is research from the Pew Research Center. Thank God for Pew, because I wouldn't have a show without Pew's data. Pew Research Center published this. This is the cable revenue from the 3 major cable news channels. Fox News is the black line, the one that's making a lot of money. And then you have CNN and MSNBC coming sadly in third. Now, what you notice is that the presidency of Barack Obama was really, really good for Fox. Really good for Fox. And you know what's funny, guys? Is that Rachel Maddow is experiencing a similar bump right now. There's been a bump in Maddow's ratings because of the Trump presidency. So what they have done then is they have, once they got over their need to try out satire and realize they're terrible at it, they embrace the spirit of a genre that is called outrage. Now, this is a book written by Barry and Soberai, who are both at Tufts University, that characterizes a genre of political programming that they call outrage. Outrage is characterized by a charismatic host, news analysis, not actual news or investigative journalism. It's characterized by identification of threats and outgroups, extreme language, lots of emotion, and hate. Okay, so now the authors characterize outrage as something that exists on both the left and the right. You got Rachel Maddow. At the time they wrote the book, you had Keith Olbermann on MSNBC, right? But the reality was they were bending over backwards to make it seem like this was an equal opportunity situation. Folks, it was not, okay? the right is really good at this genre, and the right prefers this genre. That is why the Fox News hosts make more money than any other outrage hosts. They have more viewers than any other outrage programs. They also, when you look at the content of outrage on the right, it is more outrageous as a genre, meaning the language is more extreme, the emotions are heightened, the identification of threats is bigger on the right than the left. Okay, now, if you hadn't had an opportunity to, I don't know, watch Fox lately, you might not understand what outrage looks like. So if you want to think of what outrage is, you could think of our friend Sean Hannity, who has been very interested recently in something called the deep state. Anyone heard of the deep state? Deep state, okay. So Sean Hannity on his show, very popular show, on Sean Hannity's show, he has spent a lot of time talking about the deep state, which is sort of like an invisible government, kind of, that is in there, people who are actually running things, who you don't really see, but they're like secretly conspiring to like undo any good thing that Trump does. Sort of like a worldwide socialist conspiracy, okay? Now, think about that. And also then think about how everything that was old is new again. Because what he's doing and on this genre, we think of it as new. We think of it as something that's been around since the 90s. It's not new. There was a gentleman whose name was Dan Smoot, who had a radio show, very popular, especially in the South and Midwest, in the late 1950s through the 1960s, the Dan Smoot Report. And guess who wrote a book called The Invisible Government? Son of a bitch. Dan Smoot. In fact, does this sound familiar? Somewhere at the top of the pyramid in the invisible government are a few sinister people who know exactly what they're doing. They want America to become part of a worldwide socialist dictatorship. Goodness me, there was a handbook, okay? So when we think about this, what we need to start thinking about is, what is it that is driving this genre and satire to look so different and be so compatible with these two different ideologies? Why does it seem that this sort of outrage genre is compatible with conservatism? Conservatives make it, they like to watch it, and why is it that like irony or satire is something favored by the left? They like to create it and they like to watch it. What is going on there? In fact, it turns out that liberals and conservatives are not just different. You're like, no shit. They're not just different on the things that they believe policy-wise. We're not just different on like gun control and abortion rates. We're different on all kinds of stuff. Which brings me to a little game that you were going to play with me called Liberal or Conservative. Okay. So in order to play this, I actually do need you to participate. So in order to do that, we need to practice. In order to practice, I'm going to have you yell out answers to questions that I know that you all know the answer to. Okay, this is how we rehearse giving suggestions. Okay, that's how we do this, because this is what we do in improv, and it works there, so it works here. So, first, what month is it? April. Only like 4 of you know the month. Okay, let's make it easier. What year is it? Okay. Who's the president? That was amazing. I was like, oh my God. All right, well, that was pretty good. Okay, so now you are going to yell out. I'm going to show a picture, and you're going to yell out if this is something you would associate with liberals or conservatives. Okay, we're going to see how this works. I'm imagining it's going to work amazing. I don't know. Okay, are you ready? I'll even describe what it is as I show the picture so that like there's no ambiguity. A city. Liberal. This is my new favorite game. The country. Conservative. Now that one's easy, okay, because that's actually pretty political, because when you're in the city, there's diversity and, you know, whatever. That's pretty much it. And in the country, you're far away from everyone, and you can hate other people. It's perfect. Okay, next. A Ford F-150. Conservative. A Prius. Liberal. See? Next. Sushi. Liberal. Steak and potatoes. Conservative. This is my new favorite thing to do. Okay, now it's going to get a little wackier. Okay, now we're going to get into sort of aesthetic preferences. Okay, ooh. I'm going to show you 2 tattoos. Okay, who got this tattoo? Conservative. that to? Liberal. Damn. Okay, next we're going to get into home decor. Home decor, huh? All right, yeah. You walk into a house and you're like, I know you voted for Donald Trump, motherfucker. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
Conservative.
And?
Liberal.
That was amazing. Thank you for playing liberal or conservative. Do you know what game show this is from? Who knows? $25,000 pyramid.